it takes a lot of patriotism to sign up for something like the military. And it's hard to do that when you're risking your life potentially if you don't believe in the things that are their stated values. So when you see some of the woke nonsense that's going on in the military, what do you see yourself? Because it's got to be frustrating from someone like yourself, who I know just staunch America First patriot.
Well, you know, the American military establishment is in the same boat as your political structure, and I would argue your economy. It's afflicted with stage 4 cancer. What I'm saying is that, when your dad took office, he spent 4 years suppressing the cancer, trying to keep it at stage 2, because we were already in trouble. We'd been in trouble for many, many decades. That's why President Trump's arrival was a returning faith to tens of millions of Americans that there was, in fact, hope for the country, a belief in the rule of law, a belief in the republic, a belief in our national identity, history, and culture. Unfortunately, since January of 2020, we've jumped from stage 2 to stage 4. We're in a lot of trouble. And for the military to get anything right, you'd really have to decapitate it, because most of the people at the top are among the least impressive that I certainly remember in all the years that I served. And these people are affected and afflicted not just with the sort of stage 4 political cancer of wokeness. These are people who, frankly, will adopt whatever you want them to get ahead. We have a Washington community and a military full of opportunists who don't really believe in much of anything except in whatever gets them promoted, whatever lines their pockets with cash. The whole notion of service has largely vanished from the senior ranks. We see it, as you point out, at the lowest levels, but we're having trouble keeping good people in uniform. No. They don't want to be there anymore because they're sick of listening to the nonsense, characterizing everybody who ever did anything to build the United States and to protect it as some evildoer that deserves to be erased from the historical record. All of this sickens real professional soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines. So yeah, we're in a lot of trouble. That's why I call it now the political equivalent of stage 4 cancer. The problem for us now is that we're looking at Ukraine. And the Russians on the other side of Ukraine, these are not Iraqis. These aren't Afghans. This is a real military establishment. And when you listen to fools like this Admiral Aquilino from Pacific Command talk about our ability to fight a 2-front war, that he's not worried about Russia and he's got what he needs to deal with China, this is the kind of insanity that we absolutely do not need. Your sober-minded father would have fired him. That's absolutely outrageous nonsense. The last man to talk about a 2-front war being child's play was Adolf Hitler. We don't need people that even remotely think like that in uniform. That's where we are. There's no strategic common sense. There's no interest in the national interest. Yeah. The whole thing is about who makes money in Washington and bully whomever we want to overseas. All of these ugly chickens are coming back to roost right now. The whole world is not with us on this Ukraine business. Most of the world is very much against us, and everything is at risk. Our economy is at risk. The reserve status of the dollar is at risk. We're facing terrible times ahead. Things are not going to get better until we remove the principal metastasizing cancer from Washington, D.C. And I'm not just talking about an election for president. We need to make a clean sweep.
You're handed the keys to the Pentagon tomorrow. What do you do?
Today, as we speak, we have 44 4-star generals and admirals on active duty in the United States military, for a force of a little less than 1.1 million soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Now, at the height of the Second World War, 1943-44, when we had 12.2 million in uniform, we had only 7 4-stars. What's wrong with this picture? Anyone who has spent more than a few weeks in business and understands how to organize businesses effectively to be profitable looks at the overhead and quickly discerns what he's dealing with. We have this enormous bloated overhead. Of course, the generals hated Donald Trump. He was prepared to do something about that. He asked hard questions. So the first thing you've got to do is get rid of them all. They all have to go. You need to reduce that number to about 10, but all the ones that you've got right now should be retired immediately. Go away. Then you have to appoint new service secretaries. You cannot appoint a golf buddy to be your service secretary. You can't pick somebody because they did well in some corporation. You've got to send people in there who know something about the military. And they can't just be corporate executives from the defense industry who know how to spend money on weapons platforms. You got to have people that are really qualified, that can make the hard choices. And you tell them, you got to get all these people have to go. I want all of their resignations. Then you need to convene boards to pick successors. And you've got to be prepared to go low. This whole thing of, oh, we can't offload General Doofus. He's so experienced. But getting rid of him may be the best way to possibly improve the whole situation. I mean, this thing of he's got experience sounds great, but what you need is energy. You need integrity. You need intelligence. People that study their professions. They're out there. Most of them are captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels. And just as Marshall in 1939 began immediately removing general officers, in fact, the first year that he was chief of staff, he retired 54. By the time the Second World War ended, every single general officer in the Army had been replaced except one. Now we've got to get going, or we're not going to win anything anywhere in the future. Look at that withdrawal from Afghanistan. Those people are a disaster. McKenzie and CENTCOM, a Marine four-star responsible for that? Who in the hell was paying attention? Who reviewed the plan? Who received the briefing? Sullivan? Who got it? This is outrageous. That should never have happened. And they picked the wrong airport for the wrong reasons. And we have nice photographs of people hanging on to wings, hanging on to wheels, people that have no interest in coming to the United States for any of the right reasons. And we're flooded with people again. We know nothing about them. We haven't vetted them. This is part of the larger problem. So when you talk about open borders, uncontrolled immigration, or what I call weaponized immigration, it's weaponized because it's being used against the American people, because the government in Washington is literally waging war on the core population. You know, those are the people that say, I'm an American, not something else, and then an American, not a part-time American, not a conditional American, but an American. That's the enemy. And that's what they're going after here at home. And when you go overseas and you look at our behavior there, there's no strategy. No one has thought through anything. You know, your dad asked an important question when they tried to ambush him into a war with Iran. He essentially said, well, if we do what you're arguing, if we launch these strikes against the Iranians, what happens then? How do things look afterwards?
Yeah.
Nobody asked the question. Oh, let's
No,
go.
well,
And the president said, President Trump, I'm talking about now, said just a few weeks ago, said, look, we can handle Russia. We can handle China. We understand those issues. He does. He knows there's no reason to go to war with anybody. He said the real problem for us right now is the open border. And not just the open border in the south, because the northern border is equally open. We just don't pay nearly as much attention to it. And it's also a highway for drugs and criminality into the United States. There is no rule of law in our country. Where I grew up in North Philadelphia has from time to time been a combat zone. I tell you right now, it's a war zone. There is no rule of law there any longer. Criminality is rampant, and the American people, yes, they're beginning to figure it out, but we're about to go into a serious economic crisis. And once you start talking to people that can't get enough food, who can't afford to buy the food because the prices are so high, you end up the way the Parisian population did in 1789.